Hello, long time no see. I'm here with an update about the thoracic outlet stuff, and then also, God, it looks pretty good. I had another massive surgery, and part of the reason I'm actually talking about this, and I'm still going to label it a thoracic outlet syndrome video, is that because of the length of time most of us take to get an accurate diagnosis, frequently people with TOS will also have other things. In medical terms, it's called a comorbidity, when like two different conditions exist kind of in parallel, and they're kind of commonly found. So what this surgery is, this is on April 3rd, I had a 2-level complete disc replacement without fusion. It's the newer of the surgeries, and it is designed to preserve neck motion, mobility, and it's usually done on people who are like young or active. He was like, "Oh, you're so young," and I'm like, "I feel so old." Nothing like years of chronic pain to make you, like, the years really feel like a grind. You feel the passing of time acutely. Anyway, so after my surgery with Dr. Lum up in Baltimore last July, there was an immediate relief of some of my symptoms, and then there's this kind of waiting period where he's like, you might feel all kinds of pain, numbness, all these different things, and it's pretty much all normal, because your nerves are waking up. And I think in a previous video I indicated that even though he does this transaxillary under the armpit approach, that approach is more associated with what I ended up with, which is a lot of damage in my brachial plexus. Now granted, it was damaged already from being kind of brought up here and kind of pinned and ground against all these bony structures here. But then in the process of the surgery, you kind of have to sweep the brachial plexus aside, or I don't know which way it is, but it's just this gnarl of nerves and arteries and veins and, all these blood vessels and things, and a little bit of injury is kind of normal. But mine seems to have been dinged pretty well, and I think I told you in that other video that during the MR neurography, this kind of specialized MRI, it does show that there's significant damage that will never heal. Once it's damaged in that way, it is what it is. And so I still, though, have improvement on this left side. But I've also seen, I can't say it's a recurrence of the same symptoms, but apparently I'm somebody who really loves building a lot of scar tissue. That makes sense because I'm wearing like a full face of makeup, but I'm an acne sufferer, and my skin like deposits scar tissue really, really quickly, and it gets very thick. Anytime I've like skinned my knee or anything like that, like I scar super easy, and my skin becomes very like tough and rough in that area, so I wouldn't be surprised if the internal is the same as that. Anyway, so I just felt like the motion, the freedom that I had in here it wasn't quite it didn't feel as good as it did after the surgery. And then I was starting to experience these crazy headaches, and they kind of went from the back of my neck up, and then just like a shepherd's crook right behind my eyes. Sometimes it would be bilateral, sometimes it would take turns one side or the other. And then I also started experiencing some thoracic outlet syndrome on my right side, which is like, oh God. So anyway, and then I was having numbness and all this crazy stuff in my legs, and so I pushed for a lot more imaging, and I had to push. What the hell is wrong with people? Why not have a look inside there? Every doctor was like, oh, you heard here? Let's cut you open. Let's fill you with corticosteroids. Let's do all these like crazy things. And I'm like, why not have a look? Why not see if there's anything structural first? And it took me going to like 3 different doctors, and finally I found Dr. Michael Rosner over at GW, and he was just like, no, let's really look in there. And then here's the stuff. So I had what they called military neck. And so, you know, my neck had zero curve. And now I'm thinking, did I already go over this in another video? I apologize if I did. I'll try to be quick with it. Anyway, so we replaced my two of my discs because they had kind of slid into each other, and there was no comfortable position for me to sleep in. My neck was absolutely straight as opposed to having that kind of gentle curve that you're supposed to have through here. And we can't say whether it was years of me kind of with a head forward posture trying to look at the music stand or computers, or, you know, being shoulders up, or maybe it was partially the thoracic outlet syndrome towed me out of shape. Who knows? But it does seem like over a period of a very long time, I managed to push my entire kind of head, neck, thorax just completely out of shape. So I'll tell you the exciting story of the last minute surgery, because they approved me and then said, no, it wasn't covered. And then like the night before the surgery, when I thought that there wasn't one, they're like, or the morning before, they're like, guess what? Surgery's back on. Like, I'll tell that story another time. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting texts. Anyway, so I had the surgery, and the pain afterward was unreal. It's here, right, like the top of my scapula. Maybe it's upper trap levator scap, because they're all kind of rhomboids. They're all in there. I'm not very good, actually, with the ones that are layered like that. Anyway, and so after that, I got some ice on here, and for 2 weeks, I had the sorest throat of my entire life, because they go in through here. I can't even think about it. And they have to move your windpipe to the side. And so that was just extraordinarily painful. That was like shockingly painful. Breathing, oh God, the whole thing was crazy. And then I started doing lots of physical therapy. And for the first like month of physical therapy, it was amazing. It was just like, my progress was like, I started skating again, and I was a little bit sore, but it wasn't like terrible pain. And then I started playing the cello, and that seemed to piss it off, but it was the old pain. It was the pain that I'd had like when I was 12 or 13 years old, because everything had kind of like gone back to its original, slightly maladaptive, but that kind of the original problem. And then I started doing all these different exercises, and I really felt great. I started walking like 10, 15 miles every other day. Riding my bike, I was lifting heavier stuff, not super heavy, but like, 25 pounds, like not insignificant when you pick it up. Anyway, and then about 2 weeks ago, something changed, and I woke up from an unusually good night of sleep. And I'm sure you chronic pain people know, like, a good night of sleep is normally like, it puts you at an advantage. And I woke up and it was like my neck didn't know how to be. And every position was painful. And normally I'm used to these things causing pain. So let's say I move my head this way, I'm used to the pain kind of coming down here, right, where the stretch is. And now for me, if I turn to this side, the pain is here. If I come down here, the pain is here. Same thing here. Anyway, and so this is when I started learning about my deep neck muscles, as opposed to the more superficial ones like the SCM and the scalenes, although for me it's like only one. Anyway, those are the ones that are overburdened and they like to do too much, and then when they run out of gas, they start asking the traps to do stuff. Meanwhile, the inside ones are just like, can I have a spot of tea? They're not doing anything. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So, and I have been doing exercises to strengthen them, but apparently not enough. Like lots of chin tuck stuff, that like real sexy double chin look. Like I do that up against a wall a bunch of times, and I hold it and stuff like that. There's a bunch of other exercises. Anyway, but what I've learned is there's two different kinds of like muscle tension. There's one that is relieved by a stretch. And that's when you talk about a tight muscle. Ooh, and then it kind of gives you the good hurt, and then afterward you're like, yeah, that's better. Then what I appear to have are hypertonic muscles, and I have them in a few different places. Like my hip is that way too, hip and glutes. Just on one side, left side, why not? Everything else on the side is jacked anyway. And so hypertonic muscles are muscles that are actually firing, but they're not being used. They're not shouldering the load. So they're just sitting there like at attention without actually carrying the load or manifesting the mobilization it's supposed to be doing. And so that is what seems to be happening because I'm doing physical therapy at the Jackson clinics, which are phenomenal. I cannot say enough good things about these people. They're, at the very least, like, they might not have all the answers, but they're really curious as to what's going on. And actually, one of the guys who's like a mentor there, they're like, we think that you should come in when he's there, and we're going to like move all your appointments to make sure you get like the best possible guy. It's like, thank you for caring about me. Anyway, so they did a kind of like maneuver where he was supporting my arms and my head, and I had two different people working on me, and then they applied pressure right at like between C6 and 7, and like all of my pain went away. I was like, oh. They're like, yeah, that muscle is like, it's tied up in knots and it's firing, but it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I have an appointment tomorrow, and then I'm actually going to go up and see Dr. Brown. He's the OG. He's the guy who is the physiatrist up in Baltimore who's kind of been on this very long journey with me. So that is where I'm at. Why is this useful for you? Well, thoracic outlet syndrome and disc problems, like the Venn diagram of symptoms, is really chubby. There's a lot of different things. And also, we want it to be just like the one thing. Oh, I have thoracic outlet syndrome, and then there are these things. But frequently you get 2, 3, 4 things, especially if you're using your body improperly. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way, but just like we're doing the best we can to avoid painful postures. And we do this oftentimes subconsciously. I didn't know my head was forward all those years. And it was subtle. It wasn't even that big. It was like that. It's small, but seductive, right? Like we want to get just that little bit closer. Anyway, but frequently then when you're not using your body exactly as you should, you are then more prone to other things like tendonitis and carpal tunnel syndrome and, herniated discs. And for me, it was disc degeneration. It was pretty profound. I mean, it looked really bad when I was comparing it to like what a normal disc would look like, a normal vertebra would look like. This is just a message of, don't feel discouraged because I'm like, and then I had this other giant surgery. Because I have a feeling I probably have 2 or 3 more, if not procedures, diagnoses before I get all the way home to a life that is not shadowed all the time by pain. And I had a couple really good weeks in there though. Oh, guys, can you imagine? Like my pain was at like a 2 or a 3. That was as high as it went for like 2 weeks. It was so crazy. I didn't sleep very well. It was funny. I think maybe I was just so excited. My body didn't know what to do. Anyway, so don't be afraid to look at all kinds of things. Women also don't shy away from the possibility of postural things affecting what we call like the pelvic floor. That's basically anything. It's like abdominal, through hips, under, and then also they're like the glutes on the other side. Like that whole thing acts basically like a sling, and it holds so much of our weight. And I say women, men still have pelvic floor issues for sure, but just because of the male physiology, it tends to not sour quite as much as ours does, just because the way things are kind of like packed in, and the fact that, oh my God, how do I say this? Like, there's a hole. Like, there's things can actually get compressed in a way that, because of the way the pelvis is built. And we just have additional hang-ups, a different way the muscles lie in there. Anyway, so like little issues with your neck can actually lead to stuff in the pelvic floor, or you can actually start out with pelvic floor dysfunction, and then that can slowly torque your torso, which then can move your neck. If you've watched my videos, you know I'm always lobbying about like things are connected. And even if you don't end up having like, oh, I have this terrible pelvic floor dysfunction and I have to do these things, being aware of the way these muscles interact with each other, just learning a new bunch of stretches and things to increase your core strength as you get older, maintaining muscle mass and core strength are just like tonics for all the things that come and get you as we get older, right? So like arthritis and just aches and pains in general, urinary problems, stuff like that. If you are strong through your core and you use your core more, you're going to be a lot happier. And so I'll tell you, especially TOS people, look up the Super 6. Super 6, it is a series of stretches and exercises. If any of it hurts you, of course don't do it, but it's something that I found really gives me a sense of openness here. It also works those deep neck muscles. You do need to be on a foam roller. Some people start out on a half, and then there's kind of one that's this big, and then I've got the one that's this big because I can take a lot of stretch through here and it feels great. Anyway, so that's where I am right now. And I'm going to make a bunch more videos, I've decided, about various medical experiences, good stories, excellent people I've come across, and just like general stuff. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble. As always, you can always ask me a question in the comments, or you can send an email to contact@emilywright.net. I'm happy to help, and I wish all of you health and good fortune and contentment going forward. Thanks. Bye.